Hi everyone, it's January 18th, 2024, and this is the Backdrop Weekly Developers Meeting. We've got an exciting week this week. We just came out with Backdrop 127.0 this past Monday, so we're going to recap and celebrate, yay, the release of Backdrop 127. And if anybody's noticed any regressions or issues, we'll talk about those. And look forward to the first bug fix release, 127.1. And yeah, looking forward to see like what kinds of things we didn't get in and what kinds of things we can look forward to in the next release. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet. I'm core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. We've got a small group here today, but we'll do introductions of those present, and we'll start with Luke, and then we'll go to Joseph.
Folks, I'm Luke McCormick in San Ramon, California, near San Francisco. Sell ear on the internet. That's enough.
All right, thanks, Luke. Joseph, and then Izzy.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and a core committer on the Backdrop project.
Thanks, Joseph. And Izzy, if you're available.
Yeah, I'm Izzy. I'm a freelance developer with Drupal, WordPress, and my favorite Backdrop.
Okay,
Thanks.
awesome. Thanks, Izzy. All right. Yeah, so today's agenda. Before we get too much further, we always like to do the little contrib update. It was a busy week this week. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new contrib projects: views, merge rows, date repeat API, read only mode, administer users by role, date iCal, node access rebuild progressive, and object log module. That's quite the collection of new modules and ports for Backdrop. Thank you, everyone that's contributed those new modules. We got some of the familiar faces, Yorkshire Pudding, Laren, Bug Folder are in there. Plus, I saw that we have a new contributor, GTO1, who just joined the Backdrop contrib group, I believe. Transferred several repositories this week. Thank you and welcome, GTO1, to the Backdrop contrib maintainership group. So that's awesome to see all those things coming in. Like I said at the beginning, 127 came out on Monday. Luke, I'm going to throw you on the spotlight. Did we write a blog post for 127?
Work
No,
on it.
okay.
I'm frantically taking notes, and I'm planning to kick it out probably tomorrow.
Okay, that would be so awesome. In the meantime, we do have the release notes. I'll pull those up here on the screen share. So the release notes kept getting bigger and bigger after the release, thanks to multiple rounds of feedback from people. So this is one of our more comprehensive sets of release notes because the introduction of CKEditor 5 adds a lot of interesting processes to this particular upgrade. There's an entirely separate blog post that is mentioned here that you can go to track, like how to upgrade from CKEditor 4 to 5, and also being published to YouTube probably already. The meeting that we had just before this one, we went through a full demo of CKEditor 4 and the CKEditor 4 to 5 upgrade process, as well as looking at TinyMCE module a little bit. And so all of that is captured in the video just prior to this one. You can go to watch to check out how the upgrade process works. Other things that are in 127, major dropping of Internet Explorer support. We removed the HTML5 shim. We removed a lot of vendor-specific prefixes. We removed support for vendor-specific preferences in our CSS, and we removed support for conditional comments that were IE specific. So a lot of that stuff has been a long time coming. Internet Explorer is truly, absolutely, fully dead. Microsoft even forcibly removed it from computers back in 2021, and yeah, it's gone. So yay, the real death of IE, and we've now adjusted Backdrop to accommodate for its demise. Let's see other things that were in the 127 release. Making the mobile menu text configurable, a new visibility rule inside of layouts for comparing user accounts, changes to a views formatter to output links to content just as raw URLs. We renamed filtered HTML to basic out of the box for the default text format. And theme item list now has some ability to add extra classes to it. These sets of bug fixes were all around CKEditor, and then some other changes, removing IE support, those vendor preferences I talked about. The Grippy died, the text area resize Grippy that lets you resize text areas, now replaced by Grippy provided by browsers and CSS. And yeah, some more CKEditor 5 changes. So it's a great release. I mean, CKEditor 5, it's hard to really understate exactly how large of an effort that was to get that new module written and fully replace what's in core for CKEditor 4. I'll reiterate again that CKEditor 4 is not removed from core. So if you want to continue using CKEditor 4, you can. However, note that it is no longer supported by the CKEditor maintainers. So the people that wrote CKEditor, CKSource, are no longer releasing updates for CKEditor 4. And so Backdrop, likewise, will probably not release updates for that either. Right now, there's no security vulnerabilities known. But as we move forward, there may be some situations where having CKEditor available to untrusted users may potentially be dangerous to your site. Izzy, you got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that at the very bottom of that release notice that you're sharing with us all is the fact that it also includes all the changes that are in 1.2.6.4, because there were a lot of things that happened in the last month. So people should have a good look at that too.
Yep. Yeah, well, not a big set of changes, but a dozen more changes in 1.2.6.4. And you're saying, yes, it was a big month because 1.2.6.3 also came out in December. 1.2.6.3. And 1.2.6.3, oh, I thought it had a larger set of changes, but I guess it's not really that big. Yeah, just a half dozen things, but PHP 8.3 compatibility is in there. But yeah, it's been a very active month in the world of Backdrop with all of these releases. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing and let's see. We can go to questions for this week. So the big thing that we've got here is that Indigo Zala has asked some questions about CKEditor 4, or CKEditor 4 and 5. So let me pull up the question here. Weekly meetings. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to share screen again just so we can kind of read through this together. Okay, so these are questions for this week. I'll say it again that inside the forum website, forum.backdropcms.org, there's a category for weekly meetings. If you have topics you'd like to have discussed during a meeting, create a post if there's not one already for the next week, and then add a topic in here. So Indigo Zala asked this broad question or big question here about CKEditor 4. So Backdrop 127 ships with CKEditor 5. Additionally to CKEditor 4, that CKEditor 4 is considered to be deprecated and is visible on the status page, but migration is not enforced, though it is provided. That's good in a way, considering that the Contrib Editor plugins extensions aren't available for version 5, and there are known bugs. We might have to wait for a while to do the next step, but I think people need more information on that topic. I'm convinced, as Drupal perfectly shows how things should not get handled, turning off a module for which the most used version in Drupal 7 has no valid alternative seems like the worst possible publicity move. As we handle that differently, we still have the opportunity to notify admins via Update Manager in case an actual exploit for the editor is found. Also, Backdrop, we don't have the same precarious vendor lock-in situation as Drupal has, as the TinyMCE full integration is also available. However, that's contrib, and the Backdrop policy re CK editor in core isn't clear enough yet. What are the questions we need to answer? What will be our next steps and future plans? Are there any plans regarding version 5 plugins in contrib? Will version 4 be removed from core? When? What's the current security implication if sticking with version 4? Will we be able to help people in case a CVE gets released for version 4? Will we even know that in time? Okay, lots of questions here. So we'll start with, well, first of all, she asked a bunch of questions, so we'll just work through the ones that she already asked. So what will be our next steps and future plans? Well, let's get into these next ones because that's part of the plan. So are there any plans for version 5 plugins in Contrib? So if we go to the docs site, the list of change records here, which was also in the release notes, there's the 4 to 5 upgrade changes. And so this goes over like just generally big picture stuff around CKEditor 4 versus 5. The upgrade process, we refer over to this blog post that was published last month. But then this is changes for themes, the way that themes need to accommodate for CKEditor 5. And then there's a section for changes for modules that provide CKEditor plugins. And I mean, this is only a couple paragraphs, and it does not is not comprehensive of the challenge of upgrading from 4 to 5. But it presents two options here for contrib projects. You can create a new branch of a project. So let's say there's a module called CKEditor code style, for example. And we could make a new branch for that project to be like 1.x is for CKEditor 4 and 2.x is for CKEditor 5, and just make a note of that on the project page. Or make an entirely separate project for CKEditor 5. Considering the vast differences between CKEditor 4 and 5, I think I would more advocate for this kind of approach where there was a contrib module for CKEditor 4 and then just make a separate contrib module for CKEditor 5 and then namespace it appropriately, CKEditor 5 underscore the name of the plugin that you're providing. It depends on your particular plugin, I guess, how much difference there's going to be, like how much backdrop and PHP code there is. Maybe there's more overlap than I'm thinking. But because the plugin JavaScript itself needs to be totally rewritten between 4 and 5, there's not going to be a lot of overlap in the JavaScript side of things. So that's what I would recommend for contrib plugins, at least, is make a new module for it and then specify it as being a CKEditor 5 plugin instead of a CKEditor 4 one. This also makes note that if you're looking at writing contrib module plugins, the CKEditor 5 module itself provides 4 custom plugins for CKEditor 4, or sorry, for CKEditor 5. And the process for writing an extension plugin is demonstrated by the core module itself. So if you do what the core module does, which is implement hook CKEditor 5 plugins, and to provide a JavaScript plugin, you can look at the way that the contrib the core module adds its plugins and do the exact same thing for contrib because the process is the same. So let's see, that's the first question. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add before I go to the next one? Okay, next question is, when will seek editor 4 be removed from core? Or will it be removed from core, and when? It's a great question. We don't have an official policy on this yet. But looking at previous examples, I think we can look at jQuery as a good example of this, that we still have jQuery 1 in core, but it's no longer the default. We have jQuery 3 also in core, and new sites use jQuery 3. Existing sites stay with jQuery 1 until they manually switch to 3. The push between CKEditor 4 to 5 is a little bit more stern, in that we've actually put a note on the status report page that's a warning saying, hey, don't use CKEditor 4. You should switch to 5 if you can. Honestly, I think that maybe we should do the same thing for jQuery, that it should at least flag a warning as well, because it's also not supported. Joseph, do you have something to add?
Do those show up on the status report page? Like
Yes.
as a warning?
Yep.
Okay.
So I've got my local site here, and I'll just pull up the status report, since I've got both CKEditor 4 and 5 turned on right now. So here's what it looks like in 127. It flags as CKEditor 4 deprecated, says its version number, and says it released its end of life. See the documentation for more information. And this actually takes to the blog, to this blog post.
Should we have we have a way where if there's errors on the status report, it'll show up in your toolbar with a red circle and a number.
Mm-hmm.
Should we have that for warnings as well, with like yellow or I don't know, something other than red?
I think we've probably discussed this before, and I think that at least at the times we decided no.
Okay.
But it could be an option. I think that maybe I think that it was only decided that the functionality we have now is like the good compromise level of functionality. But perhaps, if we wanted to make it an option for admin toolbar to also flag warnings, then we could do that. But I don't know.
I wouldn't suggest doing that at this point, because it's nice not to have that red button all the time. Maybe once CKEditor 4 actually has some security implications, that could be a higher level warning.
Yep. And I'm thinking that may be where we end up. We really just don't know what it's going to look like for a security fix for CKEditor 4. And there's some licensing repercussions around that too, that if there's a vulnerability in CKEditor 4, we'll probably need to do something for Backdrop, but we don't really know what that looks like yet. That's a good idea, that we could bump this from a warning to an error saying CKEditor 4 is not secure, like you have to get off of it now. Honestly, we may do that anyway, eventually, like a year from now or something. We may want to more aggressively encourage people to move off of 4. But IndigoZella raises a really good point here about the process for Drupal was pretty painful, in that it just forced people off of 4 and into 5, and in some cases didn't upgrade them even. And so, yeah, if you moved from, like, if you jumped from Drupal, I'm trying to think of how this would work. If you jumped from Drupal 8 to 10, which isn't encouraged, you have to go through 9 first. But if you just went through the process and you weren't maintaining your site constantly, that jump between CKEditor 4, when CKEditor 4 was in core, and then in Drupal 10, it just isn't in core, you missed the transition period entirely. That your site just is like stuck without an editor for a little while. Not a great experience. So, like jQuery, our current plan, at least, barring any major security implications, is that CKEditor 4 would continue to exist in core until Backdrop 2. And then just like everything else that's deprecated, CKEditor 4 is deprecated. That's when all of the deprecated stuff goes away, is in Backdrop 2. And that would include jQuery 1, for example. So that's the only clarity that I have, which isn't that clear. I apologize, but
Mm.
that's the outlook right now. Is that CKEditor 4 will stay in core until version 2. If a security release comes out, we're going to have to figure out how we deal with that. It may also just be something like we could make a security announcement saying you should get off of 4, but possibly not make any software changes. I don't know. There's a lot of sites where staying on 4 could be totally valid for them for a very long time because only a small set of users has access to the text editor, and they're the same set of users that has access to like administer modules, and in which case your security threat is no greater having them have access to TinyMCE than it is having them have access to the modules page. Go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good point you made, that it may not be as susceptible a site. But the other issue that came up in the last meeting was that if you are converting from 4 to 5, each piece of content has to be converted. And so hopefully in the next while, there'll be some ideas about how to help make that more automated process. Otherwise, I can see it becoming quite horrendous for large sites.
To go over that, you're saying with CKEditor 4 to 5 that each piece of content needs to be upgraded?
Yes, I thought that's the impression I was getting from the discussion.
Yeah, it is. It only kind of is, and that when moving from CKEditor 4 to 5, the content that is output is totally unaffected. So when you switch from 4 to 5, nothing has changed with your content at all. It'll all look exactly the same as it has previously. But when you go to edit that piece of content, there may need to be some changes that need to happen when you first edit a piece of content for the first time on CKEditor 5, that it might reformat your content. But that will only happen when you edit a piece of content, not just by switching from 4 to 5. Has no effect whatsoever on all of the existing content and the way that it displays to end users.
Okay, so the old content can just lie there without any worry. It's just when you edit it, then you'll do it, and you'll be doing it anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And because it's only loaded on your edit pages and not on your front end, you can disable access to the editor without actually deleting the text format, and it, I believe, should not break anything.
Yeah, Joseph, were you in the last meeting? There's also an
Yeah.
extra safety catch that CKEditor 5, if it detects that it's going to reformat your content, it doesn't enable the editor. It just shows you the HTML in the plain text area.
Yeah.
So in Backdrop, editing content with CKEditor 5 is safe in that it's not going to turn on the editor unless it knows that it's not going to modify the content in an unexpected way. So yeah, so there's all of that. I think this.
Sorry, Nate. Maybe I didn't quite understand that point. So if you have existing content and you are now running CKEditor 5 on content that was previously created, and you go to edit it, is CKEditor 5 smart enough that if it has nothing to change, that it will just go ahead and open CKEditor 5? And only if it's going to make a change will it give you a warning. Is that what you said?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And maybe the previous meeting could have been a little bit more clear about that, but that's exactly what it does. Is it attaches itself, and then it checks to see if there's any changes in it. It attaches itself and then immediately asks for the source code, and then it compares the source code from what was there before it attached to after it attached. And if it changed in a substantial way, then it removes the editor, and puts back the original content, and then adds the warning. So it actually kind of invisibly attached itself, realized there was a change, and then detached itself, put back the original content, and then adds a warning saying, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Because you might lose some divs or something like that in turning the editor on. But for the hope is, for the majority of content and the majority of sites, the content won't have substantial changes when attaching the editor, and you won't see a warning at all. It'll be seamless transition for most content. That's the hope. Okay. Let's see. The security discussion. I'd love to hear if anybody else has thoughts on ideas around what would happen when CKEditor 4 does have a security issue. It's not even an if, it's when. All right, this is software. So when CKEditor 4 has a security release, or a CVE is published saying that there is a vulnerability in CKEditor 4, what action do we take?
Well, we have the luxury of being able to see what others do.
Yep, we do have that that option. Drupal will be an interesting scenario. Obviously, Drupal 10 and Drupal 11 won't need to do anything because CKEditor 4 has been removed from their code bases. Drupal 7, on the flip side, doesn't have CKEditor and core, so we're not going to see any action from Drupal 7's core team either. The only place you'd see any action from would be in the contrib world. Maybe you'd see something from the WYSIWYG project or the CKEditor for contrib module. But I doubt
What
that. The CKEditor for contrib module is maintained by CKEditor source, the team that wrote the whole library.
What
So
about Drupal 9? Isn't that still? Or-
good question.
I
I
think
don't
Drupal
know if
9's
Drupal
already end
9.
of life.
I'm googling that real quick. Drupal 9 support ended November 1st, 2023.
Yeah.
And Drupal 10, oh wait. Sorry, this is a more difficult question than it seems. I think Drupal 10 doesn't have an end of life date yet because Drupal 11 hasn't been released yet. And so I think the release date of Drupal 11 determines Drupal 10's end of life.
I guess I missed whatever portion it was where they supported the last two major releases. I guess that's no longer the case, huh?
No, they don't support the two previous releases for the whole life cycle of them anymore. Now I think that there's like
I think
there's
it's
so many.
based on Symfony's release cycle now.
Yeah.
So anytime there's a new major version of Symfony, they have to produce a new major version of Drupal.
No, I knew that. I just remember just from years and years and years ago that they always, supported the current release and the previous release, and I didn't notice when they dropped that.
Well, in any case, for the purposes of CKEditor, Drupal's not going to be super helpful, I don't think.
Yeah.
So,
Are
yeah,
there any other PHP projects that support CKEditor 4? Does Joomla or Laravel, anything like that?
I'm not sure. I know Craft CMS went through the same process that we went through, going from 4 to 5, because I referenced a lot of their code in making our plugins. There actually was a large group of CMS contributors, all basically trying to help each other out in CKEditor's queue, because there was a lot of questions about how to do a lot of basic things. So yeah, I'm not sure that we'll have other projects to reference. Yeah, go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking that from what I've heard so far about how elegantly CK Editor 5 picks up on existing content and the presence of a very full tiny MCE. I think if there are any security issues with 4, it would be a good time to just remind people that that they do have 2 very good workable options, and just encourage them to move on.
Yeah, and if that were the case, we would probably write a security announcement that would get published on backdropcms.org/security, and we could publish something to the news feed as well, which then shows up on the default dashboard. So your backdrop site /admin/dashboard, there's the little news block there that we can publish to, plus the other channels that we normally publish through Mastodon, Twitter, etc.
Yeah, that would be good.
Let's see, I can't remember where I was going with this. Oh, I remember what I was going to do. There is also, this is actually telemetry. Okay. Also in Backdrop 127, there's CKEditor module version, which I don't think that we've set up yet. I should have made a note of this when we did the release. Project backdrop, and then go to the telemetry page. I don't think we yet have, okay, so we have CKEditor version, but this is actually misleading. So if I go to edit the telemetry, this is actually CKEditor 4 version, and it's actually just that version. So we want CKEditor module version, and that is just these integers. So it should be fun to see this generate on the fly. So if we go to the telemetry data now, so the CKEditor 4, so now we have, there we go. So that actually is reporting the CKEditor 4 specific version. So you can see how many sites are running 4.18 and then 4.22. But the CKEditor major version is, oh, it's currently totally blank because sites only report that information as they do check-ins. So when they visit the status report, I think it is that it actually sends this information. But the mothership, if you will, hasn't received that information. If we receive information that's not actually tracked on the this tab here, then we discard it because a lot of information could come in that's not relevant. So, but I'm sure that this is correct, CKEditor module version, and so that will start populating. So that will give us an idea of how many sites are running CKEditor 4 versus CKEditor 5, regardless of whether they're an old version of, well, regardless of whether or not they're 126 or 127. We will have the caveat that only sites that upgrade to, oh, I need to hold my tongue there. Only sites that are on 127 and higher are going to start reporting this information because that's when it was added. But at least we now have that for reference, that
So can
we'll
you
be able to
test
see
that?
how many sites stay on 4 versus move to 5.
So can you test that with the demo site you were using before, and just go to your status page and see if it triggers it for you?
Yep. So let me see. Let me make sure I've got telemetry turned on. I don't. Oh wait, that's, okay. That's the contrib project. Okay, so telemetry. Great. So if I go to telemetry, it might be on cron job, so I'll run cron. And so let's see. Oh wait, this isn't telemetry. Okay, so here we are. So the CKEditor 4 version, CKEditor 5 version. and then there's CKEditor module version. And in my case, my site is running both CKEditor 4 and 5. So let's see if the telemetry is refreshed over here. Huh. I might not have been the only one, or it's also just been a couple of minutes, so we're starting to get some report. So both CKEditor 4 and 5, there's one site doing that right now, and that's my dev site that I have reporting. So then you can see CKEditor 4 only, CKEditor 5 only. So this will give us some indication, like as we move forward, exactly how worried we need to be about CKEditor 4 sites.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts or questions about this particular topic? Okay. Let's see. Next one is, let's see, link to the release notes. I think release notes should be easier to find. Patrick R says this, and I would suggest the following changes. On docs.backdropcms.org documentation core updates, release notes should link to backdropcms.org project/backdrop/releases. So that's this page. Oops, probably not that page. Oh, it's got a colon. This page. There should also be a link to the release notes in the left menu of the documentation under appendix/references. So this is the page that is most commonly referred to for doing upgrades, like how to do an upgrade process. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Oh, okay, saying that just that the list of releases somewhere in here, there's a link, or there isn't a link that should be linked. Well, anyway, I'll think about that maybe off recording. Okay. And then lastly, I'm sorry I didn't fully answer that question. I think that that's not something that needs discussion so much as it needs action. And so I'll think about that once we're off the recording. Okay, next up is Tim would like to schedule a dev meeting sometimes in the next 2 to 3 weeks that is focused on our planning around Backdrop CMS version 2.0. I go into this discussion with no strong feelings about when 2.0 should come or what should be in it, but I feel like it's time to think about when we think it might happen, what kinds of changes we expect to see in it, when would it be appropriate to start working on it. So I agree. This is great that I think ideally we would have a full meeting to discuss all of that, because I think it's going to be kind of a bigger conversation. Also, we might need to make sure that we get a good representation of our project management committee there, so that they're all present and thinking about this particular problem as well. Be nice if we could get our core committers all together too, but I mean, it's a big group. Getting everybody together at the same time can be challenging. But yes, I think it's interesting to start thinking about it. The only overhead that we really have, which is substantial, is that anytime if we open up a 2.x branch, anytime we make any commit, we then need to port it not just to the previous release, but also to a future release. Our overall strategy for managing future releases had been, when we first started the project, like way back in 2013, we had the conceptual idea that we would always work on the current stable branch first, and then we would forward port to the next release. We need to discuss if that would still be a viable solution. I think that came from the world of Drupal, where getting anything fixed in Drupal 7, you have to fix it in Drupal 8, 9, or 10 first before it can be fixed in 7. And I think that people found that to be super frustrating because there were two different pieces of software at that point, and there were hundreds of thousands of sites that were being affected by a bug and no sites that were being affected by it on the future version. And contributors would just get stuck constantly on like needing to port something to the software they weren't using to get it working on the software they were using. And that was a frustrating experience. And I
And
think we'd
also, and
like to avoid
also,
that.
and also, there were often patches for Drupal 7 that were actually very good, but they couldn't be committed because of the future version not having that feature or whatever.
Yep. Yep. And so that's a very real problem that we may run into, especially as Drupal or Backdrop 2.0 uh, will be years away potentially. That could be a long time where more divergence may occur, where like porting stuff back and forth between 1 and 2 may become increasingly difficult. But fingers crossed, with careful planning, that won't happen. Like Backdrop 2 very well may not have any shiny new features and may just be everything deprecated removed, in which case there's extreme compatibilities between 1 and 2 still. Every new feature still goes into 1. It's also ported to 2, but they're going to be the same in pretty much every way, except that deprecated functions are going to be removed from 2, which shouldn't be used in 1 anyway. jQuery 1 will be removed, Ceditor 4 will be removed, and things of that nature. Go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, so I haven't been around very long, and I think that my knowledge of what 2 might entail is very thin. But with this year being such a big year for people with Drupal 7 sites to get on with things, I think the perception of having Backdrop engage in a discussion of Backdrop 2 could end up kind of being more confusing than it's worth. I think, give people a chance to settle into the virtues of Backdrop and give themselves a break from the headaches of Drupal transition. Drupal's great when it's working. Let them feel comfortable that they're making the right choice to come to Backdrop.
Yep, I agree. And if we pull up the roadmap page, backdropcms.org/roadmap, which I admit hasn't been updated for 127's release yet, but let me share my screen one more time. So this is the roadmap page, and there's a version 2.0 section, which I feel like if we revisit this, we may change it, but I feel like looking at it right now that it still is pretty accurate. That version 1 will continue to be the active branch of development until at least January 15th, 2025, so a full year from now. And it will be continued to be supported until version 3 is released. I think that's probably meaning security releases will continue to be supported. But we'll see. I think it's good for us to have stated this and then to stick with it, unless we find it to be impractical. But I think that generally the truth is still here that this is at least January 2025, and that's just talking about Backdrop 1. But the whole question here isn't about like when Backdrop 1 will stop being supported. It's when do we open development for Backdrop 2, which we haven't made that decision yet at all about like when would it be appropriate for us to open that branch of development. Okay. Looks like we ran ourselves right up until the end of the hour. We did get through all of the topics that were in the agenda for today, so I think that we can potentially just wrap it up at this point. Still, yeah, I'm sure that discussion left left a lot to be desired, because a lot of things, like, we can't just reach decisions on things. We're still in discussion point, and so I think that's where we are with, what happens with future releases of CKEditor 4. When does Backdrop 2.0 get released? We'll have a whole separate meeting on that particular topic. So for now, though, I think we can celebrate the 127 release. It's a great release, lots of features and functionality added in that. And yeah, it's just celebrate also that 2024 was a, or sorry, 2023 was a great year for Backdrop. Lots of progress and lots of activity. Our 3 releases as always. New contributors, more contrib modules than ever. Just everything is looking good for Backdrop. This is a big year for transition because it's the last year of Drupal 7's life, and it's kind of a make or break moment for Backdrop as far as like widespread adoption is concerned. Even without widespread adoption, like Backdrop is kind of the slow and steady. Like we're continuously growing, just not at like a pace as large as we would like to be. We're only at a couple thousand websites, but we'd like to be at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of websites. Well, we're well poised for that to happen. If we were to have that many websites, we already have all the infrastructure. We have an excellent community to support that number of websites. But we're going to see, like this year, if people really, really start to take the end of life of Drupal 7 seriously, and if they do, if they come to Backdrop as the solution. That's what we'd like to be. That's what we'd like to see, because that's what Backdrop was made for, was to be that transition for Drupal 7 sites. So moving into 2024, that's what we would like to see. Get those Drupal 7 sites off of Drupal 7 and hope that Backdrop is going to be the solution for them.
Awesome. Awesome.
Sounds like marching orders to me. I'll see if there's anything, any trees I can shake there.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're all set. Okay, thank you everybody for being here again this week. Thank you everybody for the excellent 2023, and we'll see everybody